All right, we're going to begin our election commission hearing. Before us today, we have Interim Administrator of Elections, Ms. Joan Nixon, Finance Manager, Mr. Bill Hayden, and the Chair of the Commission, Mr. Buchanan. So before we begin, I need to ask Ms. Nixon, are you satisfied with the Mayor's proposal for your budget this year?
We would like to discuss that a little further.
All right. You may continue.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to be in front of you today discussing our budget. But first of all, I would like to introduce Mr. Ron Buchanan, and he would just like to make a few comments, and then we can go on with our presentation if that is okay.
That's fine.
I have been on the job 4 weeks yesterday, and it has been an exciting 4 weeks. And so I don't know a lot about the budget other than the fact that from 2008, we had 27 full-time employees and 16 part-time. We now have 20 full-time, a deduction of 7, and we have 10 full-time, a deduction of 6. At some point in time, when I came in, we were under a state review that criticized the elections last year, and the primary area was the recruiting of poll workers and the training of poll workers. You've got about 20 employees that are training 10 part-time employees and approximately 1,200 volunteers. And I say volunteers because when they work 12, 14 hours a day for $100, that's a volunteer. They're not doing it for the money. And so you reach a diminishing return where the cuts in the budget do not give the staff adequate opportunity to train those people. Our objective next year, as chairman and with the staff and everybody, is to have 0 problems in the election. I know that's probably not realistic, but that's a goal we're going to set for ourselves. But if we have problems next year, it could be because we don't have enough staff to train these people. So next year is going to be a bellwether test for us, and I would just ask you all to do whatever you can to give us the resources to do the job we need to do.
Since I am new to this process of the management of the office, I'm going to acquiesce to our Finance Manager, Bill Hayden, and if I'm able to answer any questions that you may have, I will. But I will let Mr. Hayden answer these questions.
Mr. Hayden, you can use the microphone directly in front of you, and you can pull that out.
As you all know, I came from the finance department before coming to the Election Commission last February. One of the things that I looked at in the financials was to look at the history, see where we were at, analyze the budget, look at the people, and look at the past hearings that we've had here with Metro. One of the things that we, as an office, has not really, I don't want to say failed at, but we have not really interpreted real well to the council and to the finance department is our administration budget, because mostly we focus when we're here talking, we're talking about the elections, we're talking about the early voting sites, which is totally important, totally. I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about that, but the thing that we miss point on, and which is our fault, is that we don't talk about the administration budget. We accept the reductions, but it doesn't appear that we're looking at what the impact is to us on the future. So in this process, we looked at this back probably starting in November, and when we were ready to enter our requests into the web budget for finance, we had pretty much, we had looked at what we needed to do. We knew that we had to have more training programs, kind of like an aggressive hiring program for poll workers. We projected our budget for the May election and it was extremely costly because of the extra costs in fringe benefits. It moved from $8,000 to $10,000 in health care per person. So that affected the cost of, as you all know, the total cost of what the overall budget is for Metro government. We called on just extra registration monies that we would use in our registration processes to hire people for part-time. And you know, we're a firm believer in being a team player and a partner with Metro government and accepting our cuts and accepting what's given to us. But we really want to bring this forward so that we can improve our processes and hopefully gain back the trust of the people. So I'm ready for any questions.
All right, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Matthews, and also thank you, Interim Administrator Joan Nixon. We appreciate you stepping up and taking the lead, given the situations that has happened recently with the change of leadership, so we appreciate your service. The question I have is, I looked at the $750,000 that was requested on your highlight glance sheet. And my question is, how much are you requesting in additional funds to provide for poll worker training? And what are you doing to improve the poll worker process?
The extra funds, the extra funds that we've requested to get more poll workers and to just be in touch with these people and let them know that we need them. We requested $56,800 for training sessions, so that extra training sessions above what is budgeted for the May election, so that we can bring in more people. Some of the problems that we had during our November election and the August election is that we had people that just didn't show up. It's no fault of anybody else's, just sometimes people don't get up in the morning and show up for work. We had a lot of senior citizens that really believe in the voting process, and they showed up.
And may I add, in part of that was it 56, I believe? 56,000. It's going to train on the electronic poll books. That's the state coordinator has allowed us to use those now, so that is what we're going to be concentrating a lot of our training with the electronic poll books. And those monies were partly to be used to train those workers, and those workers include the officer of election, precinct registrars, to get more familiar with that process with the electronic poll books.
Will you also be developing a program to actively recruit new poll workers?
Yes, we are. We are planning to address, get in contact with different organizations. We got a great list, a great help from the Nashville Chamber of Commerce just recently. Got a list of organizations where we can partner with them and come up with some ideas to recruit their workers from those organizations, and of course with the parties as well. So we are looking to more planning and getting more ideas on how to get more poll workers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Berry.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome. It's nice to see all of you. I echo Council Lady Johnson's congratulations and welcome you here. I have a couple of questions that are budget focused. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all the other issues that we've addressed in the past. One of my questions has to do with, you mentioned that you had poll workers who didn't show up. I've heard of one poll worker who actually didn't show up, but we paid anyway. Was that a common occurrence? Was this something that we've been able to recoup those tax dollars? Can you speak to that at all?
I think you're referring to one that was mentioned in the audit.
Correct.
Hold the mic up, if you could.
That person was paid $220, and I can speak to it from a physical fiscal manner. I can't speak to it as why the. Why
no,
the
I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the.
No,
was that
we did not receive the money back. We did request it. We did receive a check, and when we cashed the check, it bounced.
Okay. Thank you. Another question I wanted to just ask is ongoing legal fees. We just had legal before us a second ago. Are there any ongoing legal fees currently with any lawsuits that we have with the Election Commission? Are we involved in anything right now that we need to be aware of, that we need to be budgeting for or thinking about?
We did have some legal fees from a lawsuit that it originated with Williamson County, and our chairman, our election commission, voted unanimously to be added on to their lawsuit with the Williamson County Election Commission versus the Brentwood Library system. So those legal fees, Mr. Hyden had gotten a bill for, and but we are involved in another lawsuit. An employee, former employee, is suing the Election Commission, and we don't get those bills from the legal services of that lawsuit.
Right, but speak to the other one if you don't mind.
The other one is about right now. We've received three bills that I have transferred over to Metro Legal, and they total to about $34,000 at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Also, I know that there's been some talk about moving your offices out of where you're currently located. What is that going to do to your budget? Have you budgeted for that? Is that, what do you all think about that move? Has there been some conversation about that?
No, we didn't budget for that. We were told today that we had a few employees from General Services do an assessment, a partial assessment of our office today, and we talked very little about it, and I said, it's not in our budget, and they said, well, no, it'll be all paid for. So, and we talked about a date, and they said around July the 15th.
So Commissioner, yeah.
I'm not quite as timid about voicing my opinion. I don't think it's a good idea. It's going to hurt early voting with people having to go out to Murfreesboro Road to try to vote and not having a voting place in central Nashville that they can vote. So, I mean, if we have to go, we'll go and we'll do everything we can to make it a good transition. But my preference would be no.
So by moving, you would lose that early voting site at Howard School because you would no longer be there. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Right.
I've been hearing that we would be allowed to use part of the campus as a satellite office for early voting, but we would also have to have an early voting location at the main office if we were to move at Murfreesboro Road. So we would be doing two sites.
And that actually leads me to my last question regarding early voting. And, we've got a big judge election coming up next summer. And back in 2006, I think is the last time we've had this. How many early voting sites do we have? Have we budgeted for enough? What's the status?
Well, the early voting sites that I have budgeted for, we have one early voting site, obviously at the main office, which we're required by law. And then we have budgeted for 12 other early voting sites for 7 days.
And how does that compare back to the 2006 election? Do you know?
I don't know that.
2006, it was just the main office.
Okay, so we've added more. There is more there. Okay. Yes. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And let me add that at first I had budgeted for 6 early voting sites for the 7 days, and then the commission asked me to change that to the 12 early voting sites for 7 days.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady Berry. Councilman Tiger.
Do those 7 days include 2 Saturdays? Yes.
I think so.
Could I ask Mr. Riebling about the assertion that there would not be early voting at Howard School?
There's no question there'd be early voting at Howard School. With the electronic poll books, we would set aside a place at Howard School so that people who are used to coming to Howard School would be able to vote there like
so they will still have the Southeast Murfreesboro site as they're required by law, but there is money in this 12 satellite sites that Howard School will definitely be one of those sites.
I don't know what they've budgeted in there for where their 12 sites would be, but I can assure you there will be space available for an early voting site at Howard School.
Does that address those concerns?
Yes.
Okay. Do we pay for training when we bring these workers in for a day? Is a half a day? What is necessary to have a competent worker who, you know, may be a senior, may be computer skilled, may not be? Do we pay them, compensate them for this training?
Yes, $15. $15. They're paid $15 for every class they go to. And when the electronic poll books were introduced last year, we did, if they weren't comfortable with the initial training, they came back for more, and we paid them for a max of two classes during last year's election cycle. And we also had open Saturdays before the November election for them just to come, not paid, but they would just come in and just be more familiar with the electronic poll books, but they are paid.
$15 for how many hours?
Usually our training classes are at least 2 hours.
Okay, so that basically just covering gas to get there.
Exactly, and the officer of election must come to more than just one class. So, and their classes are three and a half hours long. So it's a long training. It's intense, and but they are compensated for that.
So, is this the area that you don't feel like you have enough money to?
Yes.
When you hire these new people, you've got to get them trained.
Well, and what we're trying to do something differently this fall is to go ahead and train them ahead of time, because we're going to have to train them before the election in May. But we want to go ahead and start recruiting those new workers now so they can be familiar when they come back in the month of March, so they can start that training over again. But we just want to, this is just an incentive to get our recruit more workers, and to, we can't have them come and train and we're not going to be able to pay them for their time.
Is the training required to be at the main office site, or is it possibility of hosting this training near people's neighborhoods and communities where we don't ask them to drive all the way across town?
Well, our trainings are usually held at the Sunny West Auditorium in the Howard Building or at the Metro Southeast facility. So it's either one of those. We haven't discussed another site to train. That is a possibility we could probably look at.
Could you get us some cost figures as to what would be necessary to do some satellite training in 3 or 4 different quadrants?
Yes, we could.
So what I'm getting from you is there's 100% certainty and confidence in the poll book system.
Yes.
We've purchased everything we need. All that's, now it's just an issue of getting people up to speed on
yes.
these and the technology. Do you feel like that the increased technology down the road, as people are comfortable with it, will help offset some of these costs and phone lines and delays of
yes.
calling, where am I supposed to vote, and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. The electronic poll book, although it's specifically precinct programmed, if you walk into a precinct that's not yours, we can look up your name and tell you where you go. We can actually print that off to you, and you can go on your way. So it is going to, and we've already seen what it can do. So we are very excited about this technology and being able to reduce costs and reduce errors, a lot of errors at the point of issuing the application for ballot.
There's a comment in our data that you presented about concern of lack of proposed software licensing fees
yes.
and registration program adjustment. Can you address that, Joan?
Yes. The contracts that we have for the electronic poll books, the voting machines, and our voter registration system, the licensing fee was part of that contract. So we have to pay those. And if we don't have those funds returned, then we have, I believe we have 2 unfilled positions, and we would have to use those unfilled positions to pay those licensing fees, as we had to do last year. So we need those funds to pay those licensing fees, to use the software and use the product.
And do we know what the dollar figure is?
Yes, it's $44,400 for the voting machine license fee. It's $9,200 for the mega profile, the big database, and it's $38,300 for the second-year agreement on the electronic poll books.
Rich, is it your position that their budget has sufficient funds without reducing personnel to cover these licensing fees, or what's the?
Many departments are often asked, they have to absorb that in their budgets, and that's what we've proposed in the budget we presented.
Have you perused their budget that, other than cutting personnel, are there other places that these licensing fees can come from that you would suggest?
Well, I don't think this would entail cutting anybody's salary. It might leave some positions unfilled for a while that have been probably unfilled for a period of time anyway. I don't know the specific, I can't get into I don't know all the answers to your question. I can get them for you. But I think when my staff reviewed the budget, they were very comfortable with the budget that we presented and thought it would provide the Election Commission with ample resources to meet their needs next year.
So, Joan, Mr. Hyden, is it your all's position that unfilled positions can cover this, or are you saying that you would physically be having to cut 2 additional filled positions to be able to pay these license fees?
Well, again, we want to make notice that we are partners of Metro government, but in this case, since I think when you look at our budget and you look at how we're spending our money, you'll see that of the people that we have working there, some of them are working as much as 17% to 33% of their annual salary in overtime. So you're looking at 18 folks out there that's working in a short period of time that many hours. We've worked, I think, I have that here. We had, in the November election, we worked 2,883.76 hours of overtime in a 3-month span with...
Is that paid overtime?
That is paid time and a half. Now, anytime you work that much overtime in that short of a period, errors are going to occur. Unfortunately, that's just part of it. And we have done our best, and we have done it to spend the money wisely, turn money back in.
Right.
And because we have a non-recurring budget for the election, we have a recurring budget, which is our administration budget. That's the one that always, gets cut, and that's the one that we're concerned about. Because, like I said, besides being, let me say to Joan, she's not only our administrator of elections right now, but she's also our deputy administrator. She also shares human resources with me. And I'm the finance manager, but I'm also payroll, I'm also procurement, and I am also the other part of HR. So we work, everybody wears a lot of different hats in our office, just like the rest of Metro departments, because I know that we have cut a lot of money since 2005, and the council has done an excellent job at administrating the budget. And but in order to answer some of the problems that you've read about, we need to bring this forward so that it's talked about.
Mr. Chairman, let me just make 2 final comments, and we're not to the stage yet of wish list and whatnot, but Mr. Hyden's comment there about...
If you do want to request something to be placed on a wish list,
well, I think we've got an issue, and when we have an employee that tells us that, but based on the amount of overtime that's working, mistakes are being made, we have a responsibility to the public to ensure strong, solid, reliable elections. Mm-hmm. And when we have an official here that says mistakes are made because we're tired and we don't have enough personnel, then I would rather us close early voting sites to have fresher people and less mistakes. And I've been one set here every year saying more early voting sites, more convenient for the public. Don't make them go stand in line and drive all over town and whatnot. But if it means mistakes are being made in the reliability of our elections, we just can't have that. And so I would just say that as we get further in the process, we've got some issues with this department we need to take a strong, serious look at.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask a question along what Charlie just asked along those lines. But I want to say that I want to commend Ms. Nixon and her staff, because I've been over there many times for a lot of years, and they've always been courteous, professional, and they do a tremendous job. It seemed like you just got overwhelmed in the last couple of years with a lot of stuff, and I was just wondering about that stuff, such as, problem with provisional voting and not enough voting machines, long lines, and all that kind of stuff. And I think with all that you got to do, what Charlie was saying, is probably create some of that. Can you tell me what have we done, what we need to do to kind of eliminate that stuff and make sure we got the electronic poll book trustworthy? Because you got people now scared of them. Right. And we got some work to do to make sure the public know that they can vote, they can get provisional ballots, they can not have long lines. Is that going to cause more money to get that fixed? And if so, what are we doing about that, though? Try to make that better.
Well, first of all, we were in a redistricting year, so a lot of the about at least 40,000 of the cards, the voter registration cards that we sent out for redistricting, came back undeliverable. So we hope to catch all of those during the period of early voting, but a lot of times people choose to wait on election day. So what that created those long lines, because voters were going to where they thought they would go across the street. Now they're found out they're supposed to go down the street. So, and that was one thing that the electronic poll book did. It allowed, in fact, one of our commissioners, A.J. Starling, took one of those out to Watkins Park Community Center, and because he realized that the lines were just so long, and what happened was those voters assumed they were voting at that particular location. So he took the electronic poll book out there, realized they were supposed to go down the street. So redistricting caused a lot of that backlog and a lot of the long lines that voters were experiencing. Also, the change of address. Because of those cards being returned, voters didn't change their address with us. We changed about 6,000 changes of address from election day alone. 10,000 during the period of early voting, but on election day alone, we changed 6,000 changes of address. So that's a lot of people. And so during a redistricting year, you're going to have those types of lines and that kind of not understanding what to do and where to go.
So it should be getting shake out and getting better as we go on.
Because we're going to be doing our list maintenance, and that allows us to send confirmation notices to those voters who have not had voter activity to update their addresses and give them the opportunity to update their addresses.
And one final question so the public can know. What type of ID must a voter possess in order to go through that thing and vote without a lot of questions?
The law was, it used to be the law that it would be any government, state government ID. Now it's Tennessee photo ID or a federal ID. But if it's a state government, it has to be from Tennessee. So you couldn't use before, if you were, long as you showed a government photo ID such as the Mississippi driver's license, you were allowed to use that photo ID to cast your ballot. Now it has to be a Tennessee driver's license or a Tennessee handgun carry permit or a Tennessee, anything that's Tennessee state government with the photo ID.
Is there a chance that they will let local government ID
that was
work?
Discussed and it was not passed. It did not go through. So I can't use my Metro ID to cast my ballot. I have to use my driver's license or my passport. That
would classify as government ID?
Not state government.
But Metro government?
It has to be state government, not Metro government.
Okay, that's a little stretch there. But thank you so much and keep the job. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Councilman Hunt. Councilman Stein.
Thank you. I preface this question by saying I'm a charter member of the Joan Nixon fan club and have been for a long time. But Mr. Buchanan, what's the time frame to hire a permanent administrator of elections?
Considering that we've only had 5 days post vacancy. I haven't made that decision yet. I'm not going to be in a hurry. Ms. Nixon has informed me that they can handle things, and as long as we get someone toward the fall of this year, we should be in good shape. There's a lot of programs and training and all that I want to see implemented, and I'll work with Ms. Nixon to do that, but I'm not going to be in a hurry.
Okay, I only asked that question because clearly and I'm not asking, you don't need to respond to this publicly. I assume she's being compensated for the job she's doing, but somewhere in there is a vacancy, and there should be some savings for at least some period of time, because I assume he was making a decent salary in that, whoever's in that position. So I think some of that ought to be factored in, at least, depending on how long. I mean, if it takes you all 6 months, a year, the city would be well served, because Joan Nixon could do this job in her sleep. But there's also some savings to you all that could be applied some other places, I think.
Well, I would be glad to answer that question, because Mr. Hayden had me sign a memo as I'm sitting in the gallery to place her salary at acting administrator level.
Thank you, Councilman Stein. Councilman Mitchell.
Yeah, I'd like to start off by commending Chairman Buchanan for, his bipartisan actions he's taken so far, and that's what this city has been looking for. As a state report said, the front page of the state report said elections are like championship football games. Well, in championship football games, there's referees out there, and they don't have a blue jersey or a red jersey on, depending on the team. So I appreciate your actions so far. Your actions so far say you're bringing integrity back to this office, and I commend you on that. But to get into some of the things, and again, I want to also agree with you. I think moving your office farther away from another side of the county in which I live for people to have access. I think a centralized office where it is a good location now, and putting it out there on Murfreesboro Road is, I don't know why. But going to the training of the employees, and tell me, I've heard that the former administrator owns the rights to the training materials that we're currently using. Is that true?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, let's hopefully we'll correct that situation quickly. I'm sure Mr. Buchanan, you can handle that.
Well, I was unaware of that. I knew he developed it, but he was paid to develop it by the Election Commission. And there are personal property rights that if an employee develops a program for the employer, that employer has the right of use of it without royalties or anything else. Well, so if we haven't crossed that bridge yet, but if he wants to go that way, we'll have a fight.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I know you've talked about attorneys. I've been told that we're paying 4 outside firms or 4 outside attorneys currently fighting lawsuits from the misdeeds of previous election commission members and employees. I heard a number earlier, but I think 4 different firms are costing us more than that. Have we just not been billed by all these firms yet?
The amount of the number of attorneys that's being used, I wouldn't know. But the only thing that I see is what's invoiced that comes to my office, and this one firm, their bills total to be about $34,000 now, and that's not complete.
Okay, but
the other bills probably
you may want to look into that and make sure there's not some other bills that are about to land on your desk. Something else. Mr. Buchanan, last year in this meeting, we addressed early voting sites, and election commissioners as well as the administrator of elections told us even if we on the wish list were to appropriate more dollars for more early voting sites, they wouldn't do it. I just think, giving everyone the right to vote, the easiest, most convenient access to voting is a good thing. I'll say the same thing I said last year. We're talking about dollars in here. I think the price is priceless on the integrity of our elections. And and you're working hard to correct that, but we got a long way to go, and it may cost us some money.
Well, I don't know the complete answer because, like I say, I've been on the job 4 weeks now. And by the way, it is a part-time job.
You thought.
Yeah, I thought. But the state mandates what we have to do on election day. And so the early voting is a budget item in addition to the state. We've sort of got a nut there that we've got to do to satisfy the state on election day. So that expense is pretty much fixed. So extra money that could go to early voting, I'm in complete agreement with you. The more people we can vote on early voting at their pleasure and reduce the lines on election day, great.
All right, thank you, sir. And going, I heard we've got to pay additional money for these poll books, and I was the biggest critic. Well, maybe not the critic of the poll books, critics of the people who purchased and programmed the poll books. Before your action so far tells me you will get to the bottom of this, because I don't think we ever got to the bottom of it. I'll say to you what I said to the previous chairman and administrator is the company we bought those poll books from sells poll books to counties, cities, and states that are Democrat and Republican alike. And you cannot make me sit here and believe that that company would risk alienating half of their clientele by always programming their machines to default to a Republican primary. Before we pay for any more software updates, I would like something from that company, from who in the election commission told them how to program, because I'm sure they've got a form that any new client has to fill out how they want it programmed, and I'm sure someone in our election office filled out that form and sent that to them, and I'm sure they told them to fill it out in the manner in which they did. And if you would do that for me, it would go a long way, because I'm pretty positive I know how that's going to turn out.
Okay. I'd be glad to do that for you. Yeah, I'd like to know the answer to that question myself.
And last thing, I'm with Ronnie Stein. Ronnie said he's a fan club of in the Joe Nixon fan club. I think you've got a great administrator right now, so I'm glad she's being paid for the job she's doing. But previous people holding your position and the previous person holding Jones' position, they may not be there anymore, but this state report goes beyond just scathing. I think it reaches the criminality level, and
Councilmember Mitchell, can you please keep your comments strictly to the budget items?
Well, this is our money.
Councilmember Mitchell, could you please strictly keep your comments to budget items?
Okay. Are we sending this report to Department of Justice for review?
No, nor to the State Attorney General. I've had numerous conversations with Mark Goins, who's the coordinator of elections for the state of Tennessee. He said that nothing in the report, on his opinion, rose to criminal actions. There was one person that was, paid that didn't work, and apparently some efforts were made to get that money back, and she gave us a bad check. But beyond that, I don't know that we would accomplish a lot by trying to dig that back up. I'd like to move forward and try to instill confidence in the voters.
Well, exactly, and I think the citizens of Davidson County would like that, and I think it would be setting a good example for Nashville and the rest of the state if there was misdeeds, that there is punishment for those misdeeds in that office.
My investigation is not complete, and if I discover any misdeeds that are criminal, I will certainly proceed to prosecute them.
Thank you, Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Bedney.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, parochial, I guess, is one of those 12 early voting places in the southeast in District 31 or in the area. I mean, we used to have one on Cane Ridge, and I wanted to make sure that we were still.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about early voting?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
The one we had out in early voting would be the Edmondson Pike Library.
Mm-hmm. Is there, because my concern, I'm sorry, I know this is not budget, but it's kind of budget, because if we are going to move one of the poll places to Murfreesboro, will that take away from one of the poll places that we have on the south, farther south in the southeast?
I wouldn't think so. I think when the commission would meet and discuss and assess the needs of early voting, they would, I mean, libraries are the best places to have early voting, so I would think that would always still be, I mean, Edmondson Pike was always one of the top early voting centers that we had, so that is something I'm sure the commission would look at and not want to lose.
Okay, and I guess I'm one more that wants to say how great the work is that you do and people in your staff, so thank you for your service.
Thank you, and we do have a great staff and great poll workers, so we just want to get better at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bedney. Councilmember Dominy.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of questions. You mentioned recruitment of poll workers, and I go back a year or two working as a poll worker. Yes. Back, I think 1994 or 95 was my first year to do that. There used to be staff members who took it upon themselves. I assume they were compensated to actually recruit poll workers from each party, and they would attend events and things like that. I know there was some media coverage of that a few years ago, and saying it's inappropriate for city workers to actually go into Republican or Democrat events, but I disagree with that. But anyway, do we still have those specifically charged employees whose job it is to recruit Republican or Democrat poll workers?
Well, those party designations on the staff is not required by law. We have 2 poll recruiters, and they recruit any and everybody, Democrat, Republican, anyone that would like to work at the polls. So, and they are involved well, these are 2 new ones. We have 2 new ones, and so they are getting acclimated more into the area of recruiting and going to those places, going to those organizations to recruit more poll workers. So that is part of their process.
All right.
And I agree with you completely. That's a priority I have, is to have people going out into the community to recruit the poll workers.
Well, I know it's been done in the past, and it's waxed and waned as to what their involvement has been, and I would encourage that to be pursued, because it's like I said, it's come and gone at different times over the years that I've been involved. Back to the poll books, the electronic poll books. Can you give us a summary of what the savings would be in cost of data entry as well as employee man hours involved with entering the voter history, which is where the biggest savings, in my opinion, comes from electronic poll books, is not the actual election, but after the election, is that data entry of who voted and which primary they voted in, if that is, so that's the savings that we might be, so we can determine whether or not the cost of training on those is going to be offset by the savings we have from that data entry.
Well, I can speak from how many days it takes us to post voter history. We have 45 days, up to 45 days after an election, to post voter history and send that to the State Election Commission. It took us about 35 days this last time. And with the electronic poll books, it would take a couple of days, if a couple of days to do that. Right now, it's manually done, and you do that for so long, you can make errors, and sometimes you don't balance. Then you have to go back, look at the poll book, look at the applications for ballots. So using electronic poll books, that data, it would be uploaded within a day, I believe, if not more than 2.
What percentage of your Election Commission staff would you say work on that during that 35 day period?
Well, it's about 80% of the staff, and that includes our part-time, assist us in manually entering that voter history. In the meantime, our registration part of data entry cannot continue until voter history is posted. So they have about 35 days where they can't enter any new work or update anything until voter history is done. So the electronic poll books are going to create our production will be better, and to get the information out to the candidates even at a quicker time.
So it would be fair to say that electronic poll books would be a huge improvement in efficiency for the Election Commission.
Our staff is very excited. We are very excited about those electronic poll books.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple other things. The step increases, do you have any employees that would qualify for a step increase over the last 4 years, and what would it cost me, if you do, what would it cost to make those employees whole?
I will let Mr. Hyden answer that.
We have 2 vacancies that are qualified for step increases. We have 3 now. And my position, I'm the only one left. We're holding 2 positions that are open. Ms. Nixon's position as deputy administrator was open range, and then my position is open range. But I have not looked to see what my own salary would be, what that growth would be, but I'm pretty sure with the timeline that I've been with the Election Commission, my salary is right where it's supposed to be.
If you would get that data and provide it, just the number of employees that would qualify and what the cost would be to restore those. And then a final question on the early voting site. The state law requires you to host an early voting site at the main headquarters of the Election Commission, correct?
That is correct.
So if you were to move to Metro Southeast, you would be required by law to host an early voting site at that location.
That is correct.
Can you give us a cost of opening a second early voting site so that we had one downtown?
Just from memory of years back, it's about $25,000 per early voting location.
It's approximately $2,000 per day for an early voting site. And again, we were budgeted, of the $900,000 that we requested for the May election, we were proposed that we be given $750,000. I don't know how that shakes out because I don't have the budget by line. That I just have the financial statement that you all have. So you know, the Joan and the commission will look at that and see where we need to be, see what we need to do.
All right. I want to make sure people are aware that there's a requirement by law, right, and there is a cost for having a secondary location downtown. If we were going to do that, we would need to calculate that into the expense of moving the location. I don't think it's wise to move to Metro Southeast, although it would be much closer to my house and my community. But it's just, I think the central location would be key to the long-term success of our commission, as well as providing the services to our constituents.
I've been to Metro South once, and we couldn't find a parking place. The parking there is extremely limited. So if you're going to have an early voting site there, it's going to be terrible to find any sort of parking space. Anybody doing business with the Election Commission is going to have a hard time finding parking space. Parking is one of the biggest problems there.
Well, I would agree. I've been to Metro Southeast numerous times because, like I said, I've had a history with the Election Commission, and so I've seen firsthand what's taken place over the years. And I thank you for the time for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Dominy. Councilor Langston.
Thank you. Just one quick question. With all the problems you have pronounced here today at Metro Southeast, why is it under consideration or strong suggested that the commission move there?
We were just told that we were probably going to move. That's all we really know, or all I really know about it.
Told by General Services, the commission, or who?
Yes, General Services.
And is there not a path for you to take to express opposition or dismay over this relocation? Because I've heard several council members sitting here just saying that's not a good place to go to. And you have really hit the nail on the head when you said the parking is horrendous. you know. And also, just a quick follow-up, Ms. Nixon has years of experience, and it shows here today. I think Metro Election Commission is in good hands with her as the interim chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Langster. Councilman Holloman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll try to be brief. I know we're running behind on schedule, but I do want to follow up on a couple of things that were mentioned earlier. I think we all agree that the right to vote is fundamental, and what you do at the Election Commission, frankly, is one of the most important things that we do as a local government, is to provide integrity to our elections. One of the questions that was asked, I think, by Councilman Tigard was about training over the course of years and some of the reductions we've seen in availability of resources for training. And you referenced some look back in how you had examined the availability of those resources over time. Is that something that you could provide to us as a follow-up? Yeah. I'd be interested to track that. I've read the state audit, and I know that most of the concerns center around training and staffing, and so I think it would be interesting to see how that does or does not relate to the resources that have been allocated in the last several years. So if you could just provide us a comparison of both staffing and training resources in the last few years, that would be helpful. And then to follow up on Councilman Stein's question regarding, I understand, congratulations, Ms. Nixon, they'll be paying you for the extra work that you're doing, but I think there'll still be a cost savings while you're in that interim position, and Councilman Stein raised it, but I'm wondering, Chairman Buchanan, do you have any thoughts on where we might apply those funds until a new director is hired? Do you think it will likely go towards additional training, or are there other needs that you think we would apply those funds to?
I haven't had time to give that a thought. Until the vote was actually taken Thursday, I had no idea whether we'd have a vacancy or not. So
I understand.
From that time on, I've not had an opportunity to do it. But I will rely upon the staff to give me direction on that.
Okay. Thank you. And let me just say, I also think I speak for all of us in wanting to inquire what kind of poll worker Councilman Dominy was. Was he a good poll worker?
I'll tell you afterwards.
Tell me afterwards. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Holloman. Councilman Perdue.
Yep. My question kind of rides off of Councilman Langster. And this is to you, Commissioner. I can't believe that somebody would come and just tell you, you got to move, without giving you some kind of reason. Who actually told y'all that? I mean, and this is budgetary because it's going to cost you to move. I don't care if it comes out of your budget or general services.
Well, the previous administrator was contacted a couple of weeks ago, or he made the inquiry to general services and asked about the move. It had been rumored in our building for months, and we didn't know anything about it. And he was contacted and told that that was a strong possibility that we would be moving. And then, as I stated today, we had some staff from their office assessing our needs, our space needs, and they're going to continue to assess our space needs tomorrow. And someone asked, what kind of date are we talking about? And they said around July, mid-July.
So just a couple of months.
Yes, sir.
And they're assessing y'all's needs. Y'all hadn't made an assessment to say we need more room?
I did send an email to the department head of general services to let her know that we need to be a part of whatever planning that is going to be taking place, along with the commissioners, with Bill Hayden and Bobby Medley, so we can all be on one accord and to understand what exactly our needs will be, if that is going to be a move that we're going to have to make.
Well, I'd really like for one of you to get back with us to just let us know who it is making. I mean, general services, obviously nowadays you have to ask them how long you can turn a light on in the bathroom. But I'd really like to know who it is out there that's making the decisions and assessing everybody else's area to see if what fits them or not.
Oh, okay, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no other council members in queue, I'd like to thank the Election Commission for coming before us, and your hearing is complete.